right, thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Burkholder, and I am a product marketing manager at Google, focused on our mobile advertising solutions. And I first of all just wanted to thank all of you for coming out. I realize it's 3 p.m. I'm what's standing between you and cocktail hour, and 3 p.m. is also that time of the day where your blood sugar really drops down low. So I'm glad I'm hearing a lot of crinkling, because that hopefully means you guys picked up some sugary treats to keep your blood sugar high, and maybe some caffeine as well. But hopefully my presentation will be so engaging that you don't need that caffeine or the sugar, and you'll just be so excited about designing with a mobile mind that you will be stifling any yawns and will be good to go. So today, I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. It's something that I nerd out over all the time, which is how can brands and marketers build consumer experiences on mobile that meet consumers in their moment of need, that are helpful and useful, that drive brand engagement, and that drive users to convert on mobile, or maybe it's in-store or down the road on desktop or tablet. So that's what we're talking about today, and we'll be delving into some new research that we've recently released that deals with how specifically to design a best-in-class mobile site. So before we jump into the research, I want to take a step back and talk about why are we even talking about this in the first place. If you guys have been in any other presentations today about mobile, you've maybe seen images similar to the stock photography behind me, or if you've walked down Market Street and maybe seen a billboard for the latest and greatest mobile phone, you've seen something similar. If we were to believe all these images that are out in media and stock photography, we would think that being a consumer on the mobile web is really easy. It's fun, it's seamless, it's a great experience, no problems whatsoever. But I think those of us who are on our mobile phones and trying to get things down on our phones often feel more like this when we're on our mobile phones. How many of you guys have felt frustrated like this lady in the last week or so on your mobile phone? Okay, I see a lot of hands. I'm right there with you. I felt a lot like this a couple of weeks ago. My boyfriend and I are on a total wedding circuit this year. We are going to like 11 weddings. It's ridiculous. Lots of airplane tickets have been bought, lots of hotels have been booked, rental cars, all that good stuff. And admittedly, it's hard to keep track of, have we booked a hotel for XYZ wedding? And recently, someone forgot to book a hotel for a wedding in Chicago, and it's no one's fault. It doesn't matter who forgot. Wasn't me, but that doesn't matter. Someone forgot to do it, and as soon as I realized it was a couple of weeks out from the wedding, and oh shoot, we don't have a hotel room. So what did I do? Well, I just reached for whatever device was closest to me at that moment, which happened to be my mobile phone. I pulled open my mobile phone, I did a search for hotels in Chicago, and I landed on a site that I've actually used before to book hotel rooms and airplane tickets on desktop, though. I hadn't used it on mobile before. And I typed in, Chicago, the dates that we were going, and I was returned a bunch of, hotels, like 100 or so hotels in Chicago that we could stay in that weekend. So thankfully, Chicago wasn't sold out. There were still hotels that we could stay in. But I was very overwhelmed by the amount of hotels. My one criteria for my trip was I wanted to be at a hotel that was within walking distance of the wedding venue. I didn't want to have to deal with cabs. I didn't want to have to deal with rental cars. I wanted to be able to walk to that wedding and stumble back home at the end of the night. And so that was my one criteria. And unfortunately, when I got to this site, I could not figure out for the life of me how to tell where all these hotels were. There was no map overlay visible. There was no way to filter by neighborhood. There was some filters, but it was around the price of the hotel or the ratings of the hotel. And so I was really, at a dead end. I had come this far, and yet I couldn't find a hotel that fit that one criteria. So what did I do? I hit the back button, I went back to search, and I found another site, and went to that site, typed in, the dates, the city, all that good stuff, and I was returned more hotel results. And thankfully, this site had much more robust filtering criteria. I went into the filters. It let me actually filter by neighborhood. They even had functionality so that I could toggle to see the hotels on a map. So I was able to zoom in to that intersection where the wedding was taking place and find hotels nearby, and within a couple clicks, had booked a hotel for that weekend. So success, relationship saved, one more wedding to go to, one more wedding in the bag. And what's interesting about this experience was that the first site that I went to, not only did they miss out on the opportunity to convert me as a user, they also lost me to a competitor. I had this moment of need. They had a mobile site. It was a good mobile site, but it didn't have the criteria I needed to get what I needed. So, my expectations were here and they were about here. But their competitor, who won me, had all of those things going for them. And not only did they win me in that moment, they also, win me potentially for future moments where I'm looking for a hotel. Whereas that first site, I'll probably think twice about going back to them when I'm on a mobile phone to book a hotel room. And it's not just me that feels this way. We did a recent survey and found that more than half of consumers expect companies to have mobile sites. They say they're less likely to engage with a company if it doesn't have a mobile site. So that's the baseline expectation. And then about 61% of consumers say that not only do they expect businesses to have mobile experiences, but they expect them to be able to deliver what they need quickly. They want to be able to go to the site and find what they need in a quick and efficient fashion. And so as marketers, we really need to take a moment to figure out how can we win in those moments of need when consumers are coming to us and deliver a mobile experience that's not just a mobile site, but one that allows consumers to find what they need quickly and easily. And admittedly, this is really hard to do, right? How many of you guys have been in marketing for a long time, digital marketing for 10 years? A lot of hands. And so we've had more than a decade to perfect what that experience looks like on a desktop. I'm sure some of you have done landing page testing, you've looked at conversion funnels, you've done all that stuff on the desktop. Whereas mobile is relatively new, and while there's a lot of expert opinions out there on how to build great experiences, there's not a lot of data or research or best practices necessarily to back it up. But at Google, we're really lucky because we work with some of the best marketers in the world. And they come to us and tell us what they're doing on mobile, and we've heard some interesting things. Some of these businesses that are really investing in mobile and have doubled down, especially in the area of consumer experience, are seeing great results. PlusNet might not be familiar to any of you in the room unless you have some British background, but they're a British teleco company, and they didn't have a mobile site. They didn't have a strategy, no site. They were really floundering. But they noticed that mobile traffic continued to pick up. So what did they do? They decided to double down and build a mobile site, and they saw mobile conversions increase tenfold, and the time to convert decreased by 40%. So not only did they create a mobile experience, they also created one that helped users get to the information they needed quickly and help them convert quickly. Another marketer that we work with that I just love to talk to is Beyond the Rack. They are really doubling down on mobile. They have had a mobile site for a while, but they're constantly iterating on that site, constantly optimizing it. And we talked to them last year after a recent optimization of their mobile site, and they noticed that their mobile conversions doubled, the conversion rate doubled, and they saw a 21% increase in mobile revenue. So what am I saying here? Why are we talking about mobile site design? Well, we know consumers want great experiences, and we also know that marketers who invest in those great experiences are seeing good results. So a question we get asked a lot at Google is, how do I create a best-in-class mobile site? What does that exactly look like? What are the components that go into it? And it's actually something that at Google we ask ourselves a lot. We have a ton of products, as you all know, that are based in the web, and we want to make sure that we're providing best-in-class experiences for our users as well. So we wanted to answer this question, and for those of you in the room who know anything about Google, you probably know we love data. We're like total data nerds. I think a lot of SEM marketers are too, so we get along famously in that respect. And so we wanted some research, some hardcore research to back up what does mobile site design best practices. What does that really mean? What does that look like beyond just expert opinion? So we partnered with Answer Lab, which is a user experience research company, to do some new research and study users while they are on their mobile phones, engaging with mobile sites to determine what those best practices for a best-in-class site looked like. So how did we do this? We had 100 different sites in the study. They were from all different verticals. So we had education sites, we had media and entertainment, local and classifieds, retail, you name it, we probably had it. 119 participants from 2 cities, Chicago and San Francisco, and they came in for hour-long usability sessions with our researchers. And they would bring in their own phones. So we had a mix of iPhones and Androids. And they would sit down with our researchers, and our researchers would ask them, go to company XYZ and shop for dining room chairs. And then the participant would sit there and go on their mobile phone and go to the site and navigate through it. And while they were doing that, they would say aloud what they were doing, why they were doing it, and how they were feeling, really bringing to life those pain points and maybe some of those delightful moments as well. And what's interesting about this is that the research that has been done on mobile site design, a lot of it hasn't actually been conversion focused. So this is unique in that it really gets down to what can we do, how can we design a site to make sure that our users who are coming to our sites are more likely to convert. And out of this research, we came up with 25 best practices or principles for mobile site design. And they were bucketed into the 5 categories you see here on the screen. Now 25 is a lot, so I'm not going to go into all 25 today, but what I am going to do is talk through a couple key takeaways from each section and hopefully give you guys a taste for what some of these best practices are. Some of you might be sitting in the room and you're saying, Elizabeth, this is all well and great, sounds super interesting, but you know what, I'm a marketer, I'm not like a site designer, I don't build sites, so this is not relevant to me. Even though you maybe don't build sites, as a marketer, hopefully you know your consumer better than anyone at your company. And so you're well positioned to take a step back and internalize these principles and think from your consumer's perspective as you go through your mobile site, okay, what are maybe some of the pain points that our consumers are running into that are causing a roadblock and stopping them from converting on mobile? So I would encourage you to think about that, think through that as we talk through these principles. So let's start with homepage and site navigation. So your homepage is really your first impression, right? Hopefully I made a good first impression on you guys today because first impressions are important, and if I didn't, maybe you're tuning me out right now, and awesome, enjoy your time to yourself tuning me out. If you are still with me, let's talk about why it's important to make a good first impression on your mobile homepage. That's the first point of entry where the customer interacts with your brand, and you want to make sure that when they land on that homepage, they're engaged and they know what they're supposed to do when they get there. So take a step back, think about your mobile user and what they'd want to do when they came to your site. And then you've identified your primary calls to action. Those primary calls to action should be central and above the fold on your mobile site. In our study, we found that users responded very well to sites like the Progressive example, where it was very obvious what they could do on this site. They could get a quote from an insurance provider, Progressive. Whereas this mock example with the Red X, it's kind of ambiguous as to what a user can do there. They're told they can learn more, but they don't actually know if at the end of the day they'll be able to get an insurance quote. So it's a little confusing, and our participants weren't sure that they would be able to do what they wanted to do when they got to that site. So as you're building that homepage out, really think about your primary calls to action and keeping those prominent and above the fold. For those secondary actions, you should be hosting those in a menu. And when it comes to menus, you want to keep them short and sweet. Don't just take your menu from desktop and transfer it over to mobile. I'm sure a lot of you have pretty extensive built-out desktop menus. On mobile, in our study, we found that participants, when they were confronted with really long menus, they actually lost their patience and they just didn't dig into it. So you want to keep those menus short and sweet. Macy's does a great job of this. I mean, how many of you have been to Macy's or been to their site or their store? Okay, a handful of hands. They have tons of products, right? Tons of SKUs, and yet they've been able to boil down their menu into a few simple and distinct categories, and within a couple of clicks you can be on a product page. So think about how to keep your categories simple and distinct. Finally, when it comes to home pages, our participants in this study, whenever they landed on a site and they saw this example of a full page interstitial or ad for an app, that was the first thing they saw. They were really turned off and really frustrated and annoyed by it. And they said, you know, I'm coming to this site to do a specific thing, and the first thing I see is this promotion for their app. And while that's great that they have an app, I'm here to do one thing. I don't know that I'm going to come back to this brand again. I don't want to see this. I want to just go straight into, you know, researching for an insurance quote or buying my product. So if you have an app and you want to promote it on your site, which I totally get why you want to promote your app, think about using dismissible banners at the top of the page instead of full page interstitials. They don't get in the way of the primary call to action, and our users or participants in our study found them much more amenable. So that takes care of first impressions. You've made your first impression with your home page. Now you want to help the user find what they're looking for. And that's where site search comes in. So you guys might find it kind of surprising, but you know, we as a search company had a little bit of internal debate going into this research as to how important will site search actually be. Will users want to, on their mobile phone, like pull up a keyboard and do a search, or will they prefer navigation bars and menus so that they don't have to type on the keyboard? And with the study, we actually found that site search is incredibly important. A lot of participants in our study who had a specific product in mind or specific information that they wanted to get turned to site search to get that information or to find that product. So when you are designing for mobile, make sure that your site search is highly visible. Especially if you are a retail site, it's incredibly important. And what we found resonated or worked best with users and what we recommend is, like in this Home Depot example, an open field text box at the top of the page that's highly prominent versus hiding your search under a menu or using an icon. So they found your search, they've done a search, and then they're returned results. In the study, we found that participants would only really look at that first page of search results. They didn't really scroll beyond that first page. So you want to make sure that your site search is at the top of its game, that you're returning relevant results to users. And one way to also improve relevance is to use smart features like autocomplete or spell correction. I know I'm a terrible speller. I don't know about you guys. I probably shouldn't admit that because my boss is in the room and spelling is kind of my job. But I thank God every day for spell correction on site search because otherwise I wouldn't find anything via site search. So think about those smart features and think about returning relevant results. So once the results are returned, participants in our study, if they were confronted with a ton of search results, similar to how I was confronted with a lot of search results for my search for a hotel in Chicago, you get a little overwhelmed and you want to narrow down those results. We actually found that if a user couldn't narrow down, or a participant in our study couldn't narrow down the search results, they would abandon the site. And you don't want users getting that far and then abandoning you. So make sure that you have filters implemented and that those filters are highly visible. I, as a user, sometimes find that I get to a search results page and the filters are like hidden down at the bottom of the page, or they like pop out of the side. Like, make them visible so that people know where they are and know they can use them. And then also build out very robust filters. Once again, put yourself in your user's shoes and really think about what are those items that they're going to want to filter by, whether it's neighborhoods if you offer hotels, or in Macy's case, they have sizes, they have colors, they have brands, they have very robust filters. They're a great example to look at if you guys are interested in learning more about filters. All right, so they have the product now that they want to buy or service they want to sign up for. And now it's all about getting them to cross that finish line and actually convert and check out on your site. How do you get them across that finish line? At the end of the day, it's about making the checkout process as frictionless as possible. So one thing that we found in our study was that when participants came to a checkout page, they wanted to be able to check out as a guest. If they didn't already have a profile with a company or a brand, a lot of times they didn't really want to register for yet another profile on another site. It was viewed as cumbersome, and they didn't really understand that the value that registering for a site would provide to them. So offer the ability to check out as a guest, which our participants described as easy, convenient, fast, and simple. For those of you who do have existing user profiles and information, you want to make sure you're maximizing that information and really leveraging it to make the checkout process as quick and as simple as possible. J.Crew does a great job of this. I was on their site the other day, and you can't tell from my fashion sense, I love all things J.Crew, and I'm a loyal user, have an account, and it literally, I think, only took me 3 clicks to check out from their site. I only had to enter in my security code, I think, on my credit card, and then press submit. So that is very simple. So maybe think of it like a game. How can we get our checkout process for our loyal registered users down to as few clicks as possible? Another thing you can do is implement third-party checkout. So that's something like Google Wallet. And that way, if users have registered accounts with a Google Wallet or a similar provider, they have their billing information and shipping information auto-populated. And finally, not everyone's going to want to convert on a mobile device. Some of our participants voiced just a dislike of converting on mobile devices. They didn't want to make purchases on mobile. Other people said, sometimes I'm in the middle of something and I'm just, starting the research, or I get interrupted and I want to be able to follow up later on a different device, or maybe even on the same device. So you want to make it as easy as possible for users to do that, to convert potentially later on a different device. In our study, we found that participants would actually copy URLs and paste them into emails and email it to themselves. And so if you can help them do it by just, like Macy has built in the ability to email yourself product pages or to share pages socially, that's a great way to facilitate cross-device behavior. Another site in our study was a job site, and they had the ability to email yourself job listing, because let's be honest, who's really going to apply for a job on a mobile site? You're probably going to want to do that on your desktop site. So they implemented that sort of functionality, and users really appreciated it. All right, 3 down, 2 to go. On to a really exciting topic, form fills. Who here likes to fill out forms? Anyone? Okay, I was going to say, if I see any hands, you should really channel that passion into something, because not a lot of people like to fill out forms, whether it's in the doctor's office and you have that paper form that you're filling out, like another release of some sort, or you're online and you're filling out a form on your mobile phone or your desktop or your tablet. Filling out forms just isn't fun. Like, who are we kidding? But in our research, we found some interesting nuggets that can make form fill a little bit more delightful to your consumers on mobile. Some of our findings aren't that revolutionary, honestly. They're best practices from desktop that we just haven't seen transferred over to mobile. The first being, don't ever show your consumers a form like the one with the red X on it. No one wants to see a super long form, whether that's on desktop or on mobile. It's just really overwhelming, and that's how our participants felt in the study. What our participants did like was forms like Progressive's. So you'll notice Progressive has a multi-part form, so they've broken their form up into different chunks, and they're also labeling the different sections. So the participants knew what was coming, and they knew how far they'd progressed. So they could see progress, they were confident that they could answer the sections that were coming up. And that sort of labeling and progress bar is really well received by users. So when building out forms, think about making them into sections and showing progress. Also use autofill whenever possible. On Progressive's site, they ask for your zip code in the first step, and then they fill it and populate it later down the line as well. So you're never repeating yourself. Another thing that delighted our participants when it came to form fills was brands that really thought critically about how their consumers were inputting information. So for example, if your form has a field for numbers, like a zip code or a phone number, present your users with a number pad instead of an alphabet pad keyboard, so that they're not having to toggle back and forth between the alphabet keyboard and the number keyboard. By presenting it automatically, you're saving them some taps on the screen and you're making it easier for them. Similarly, our participants loved auto-advancing fields. So if you're filling out your phone number, not having to tap into each different field, but actually auto-advancing. And that can also be done throughout the entire form. So those are just some little things that made it easier. And every time that you save your user taps on the screen, you are saving them potential user errors and potential frustration. So really think critically about how you can minimize taps on form fills. And finally, if your form has any sort of date required, so maybe it's scheduling an appointment with a vendor or scheduling like a hotel or an airline, make sure that you're presenting them with a visual calendar, not just asking them to input dates. We found in the study that our participants, when they were asked to input, like we would ask them to book a flight for next weekend or schedule an appointment for next Tuesday. If the site didn't have a visual calendar, they would actually pop out of the site and go to their calendar app, look at their calendar app to figure out what the dates were, and then go back to the site. And that just, A, takes more time, and B, is once again potential for more user errors and more frustration. So sites like Delta Airlines, who present a calendar in the actual site and give you that context and those cues, that's the way you want to do it. All right, last topic, usability and form factor. So here we're talking about site-wide design considerations that you should keep in mind when designing for mobile. So first of all, optimize your entire site for mobile. What does that mean? Well, not surprisingly, we found that participants in our study, when they were on a mobile optimized site and they were navigating it on their mobile phone, that was easier for them than navigating a desktop site on their mobile phone. Like, not a shocker, that's pretty common sense. What we did find that was surprising was that when mobile users were on a site that had maybe some mobile landing pages and then also some desktop pages, so it was a mixed experience. You land on a mobile page, you maybe go a couple pages in, they were still mobile, but then all of a sudden you're on a desktop page. That was very confusing for them and actually led to more user errors than users navigating desktop-only sites on their mobile phone. So what's the key marketing implication here, or the key takeaway for all of y'all? It would be that, well, I realize sometimes we're only, as marketers, given like little test budgets, like, okay, yeah, we can optimize our mobile site, but I'm only going to give you X dollars, and that means you can only optimize like half of the site or a quarter of the site or what have you. Well, sometimes we're in that position. If you are, you should try and optimize an autonomous, independent section of the site so that users aren't experiencing this back and forth between mobile and desktop, and they're really able to have an autonomous, independent experience on mobile versus going back and forth between the two. And then hopefully, you'll get good findings and you can get additional budget and continue to iterate and quickly launch a full mobile site. And then the final finding that I wanted to share with you all from this study is avoid full site labeling. So what does this mean? A lot of participants in our study, when they were on a site and they saw a link that would take them to the desktop site, and that link was labeled, visit our full site or full site here, users would often click on that site, click on that link. And when we asked them why, they would tell us, well, it's because that site has so much more information on it than the mobile site. And they would say this to us even when the mobile site was a fully optimized version of the desktop site and had all the same information. So you can help fight these perceptions from users that they're missing out on something by labeling your desktop site as what it is. It is the desktop site. So call it the desktop site, not the full site, or the PC site, which is what Home Depot does here. So those are just a handful of the 25 principles of mobile site design that we came up with from this research that we did. And hopefully you guys have had some thought starters here. You've maybe been thinking about your own mobile web experience or pulling it up even during my presentation and going through your site and figuring out what are those roadblocks, those sticking points that maybe consumers are experiencing when they're trying to convert on our site on mobile. And if you want to go in more detail, you can download the full study at google.com/think/multiscreen. We also have a ton of other resources there too if you want to learn more about site design, some great case studies, and if you need help finding a vendor to help you optimize your existing mobile site or maybe even build a mobile site from scratch, we do have a handful of recommended vendors listed on that site as well. So that's all I have for you all. Happy to take questions, and thank you very much.
So what a marketer should prefer, a responsive site or a specific mobile site?
Yeah, great question. So I'll just repeat it. The question was, do users prefer responsive sites or mobile sites?
Especially from a marketer perspective, like for example, if a site has more organic traffic, so what the marketer should decide to go for a responsive design or for a mobile?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different considerations. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it really depends on your business and your business goals. I personally am not a technical expert in the different areas, so I don't want to give you misinformation, but on this site we have a white paper that goes into detail the pros and cons of responsive design, dynamic design, and mobile site design. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out to learn more. Sometimes it's even a combination of the two. Good question.
So when you guys did it, whatever testing, so on home page and the navigation, what were users are expecting to see on a mobile site comparison to your PC site or whatever desktop site?
So the question, if I understand correctly, is what were mobile users expecting to see on home pages and in navigation bars on mobile that was maybe different than on desktop? I think it really depended on the task that they were trying to accomplish, right? So, and the business that the site that they were on. If you're on a mobile phone and it's maybe a business that has physical store locations, then on a mobile device, there's a lot higher local intent typically, and so they might be looking to actually go in store. So while on a desktop site, you maybe don't feature that as prominently, on a mobile site you would. Another thing that we saw that was interesting was that if you think about your desktop homepage, a lot of times you have a lot of branding on your homepage, right? You can have cool branding and great calls to action, and they can live in perfect harmony. On a mobile site, you have limited real estate. So sometimes you have to make hard calls on when should I sacrifice branding in order to really highlight my call to action? And that might depend on your business. Like if you're going after brand engagement, then maybe it does make sense to really keep the branding front and center. But if you're more of a direct response business, I would suggest potentially toning down some of that branding messaging or promotional messaging in order to really feature the calls to action so that a user knows what they can do when they land on your page.
Hi, thank you for this, by the way. It's been very informative. We're seeing a lot of sites now that treat that front page for mobile purposes as one long page, almost like a table of contents. So you'll see, the top of the page will be devoted to, if this were a book, the chapter of the book or summation, followed by several sections, which would be considered like chapters, as opposed to putting more navigational elements at the top of the page. Which do you think, and I don't know if you've researched this in your study, but which do you think goes over better, having that one long scrolling page or having more navigational elements at the top?
Great question. And I don't have any research specifically on that, but I can just speak to my own experience. So in the study, we did find that users on mobile have very little patience, right? Like they didn't want to scroll through long menu lists. They didn't want to look through long search results. So I think that's something that I would keep in mind when developing your homepage and considering, like, does it make sense to have a long scroll, or does it make more sense to give them what they want up at the top and having a balance between the two? Unfortunately, I don't have any research that speaks specifically to that, but that would just be something that I would think about is, does my user have the patience to scroll through this, or should I be presenting those call to actions up front? If you can do a combination of the two, maybe that's a happy medium. I also think that that type of site design could be related to the platform that they're building on. And so that might just be a nature of the platform they chose, and it's not necessarily a reflection of the best user experience.
Hi, have you seen any data about whether using the mobile, more minimalistic site on desktop actually improves rates for desktop?
So you're wondering if cutting down on content or just providing like a cleaner palette? Can you maybe elaborate a little?
Just taking the same optimizations that worked for mobile and then pushing them back to desktop to give users that kind of cleaner experience on desktop as well.
Yeah, I think the brands that are really getting it right are the ones who are rethinking all of their digital consumer experiences and thinking mobile first. And that does mean a lot of times thinking about what does my consumer want to do at the end of the day, and is that different by devices? Is it not? Has mobile changed things? And reimagining consumer experiences. A great example is Virgin America. They recently relaunched all of their digital experiences from top to bottom. And if you just like pull up their site, you'll see it feels very similar on mobile as it does on desktop. And they're really focused in on what does our consumer want to do? They want to book a flight. So they stripped away everything else and have built an amazing consumer experience, in my opinion, that helps consumers do just that and gets rid of the clutter. Does that answer your question?
Any more questions?
Hi, have you done any specific research in the study on ad placement in mobile? Any just kind of major takeaways of what's more optimized or not?
From like a publisher perspective, if you're trying to monetize your own site, or from a like placement of we have tractors and they're on sale, and so we're going to put this promotion
More
banner.
for ads that we have to run on our mobile site that aren't necessarily our products.
Yeah, no, we didn't do any research on that. It's an interesting question and worth delving into. I think just keeping top of mind that users have very specific needs that they're going after on mobile, and they have little patience. So making sure that your calls to action aren't diluted by any ad placements is how I would think about it, and that you're not creating noise that's going to, at the end of the day, maybe stop a user from converting.
Can you say a few words about the different ad formats for mobile devices and any best practices? And is it available both for search and display, or only display?
So you're asking about ad formats that Google has for search and display ads?
Yeah, I'm aware of the display. There's different size of 320 by 50, but is it also for something available for search, and what are the best practices?
Yeah, so the question is, do we have different ad formats on search like we have different ad formats on display? And yes, we do have different ad formats on search in the sense that we have different extensions that you can implement on mobile that will kind of change from the basic text ad. You can add a location extension that'll show users where your location is and how far they are down to a couple of blocks from your physical location. We also have click-to-call ads where a user can actually just click to call versus going to your website. And I'm probably forgetting some as well, like site links, which you also have on desktop. So all those different extension formats that you're used to on desktop, we also have on mobile as well for search.
So do you need to do something differently?
So you have to have set up, bid modifiers so that you're opted into search ads to be running those ads on mobile search on Google. I think there's one more question back there.
One, two.
Just between apps and as well as mobile site, is there any different expectations from this usability testing?
So between apps and mobile sites. Great question, and it's one that we're working on answering. So this research was just focused on sites, but we'll hopefully do something similar on apps in the future.
Hi, do you have a Google resource site where someone just wanting to know everything about Google could go and get started and then click their way through and become a knowledge king?
So about ads specifically, or all things Google? Because we have our, we've got a lot of stuff going on.
All things Google.
All things
including
Google.
ads.
Including ads. Woo, that's a doozy. So for ads, I would definitely recommend Google Partners, and there's folks in the back who work on Google Partners who can tell you what they're all about and how they can get you signed up. They have a lot of different courses that you can take to learn more about how to advertise on Google. And then, we have a main Google Help Center that links off to all our different products help centers, and that's maybe the best central place to go. It's not a one-stop shop, but that's a good start. And if you're a startup, there's also a really cool site we recently launched called Launchpad. If you Google that, it has really cool resources, everything from how to get funding to how to develop to how to find a mentor. So if you're in the startup world, that might be something to check out. Any other questions? All right, cocktail hour, anyone? I'll let Derek lead the way, but thank you guys so much.